You know the phrase, it is what it is. It is what it is. I've been thinking a lot about acceptance as a pathway to different virtuous minds. It's a huge antidote to so many different kind of ways of reacting to the world. And I've been thinking about it a lot for the last little while. It is what it is sort of the modern vernacular that maybe captures or encapsulates that. I went looking for sources, like where did this term "it is what it is" come from? I thought it probably is not in the Majjhima Nikaya, but I'm sure the Buddha said something to that effect. I didn't find it there. The first published version of it came out in 1949, where someone wrote about, I think it was Nebraska. The land is harsh, vigorous, and sturdy, blah, blah, blah. It is what it is without apology. So I've never been to Nebraska, but I take his word for it. Even George Bush used it in 2004 when he was told that John Kerry was leading in the polls. It is what it is. And we know how that turned out. But this thing about acceptance is really, I don't know, it's just been very much in my mind. Now, there's two kinds of acceptance. There's the idea of acquiescence, of just giving in, rolling over, it is what it is, too bad, what to do, let's get depressed and have a beer or go to bed or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. It's the acceptance that recognizes that this is the nature of reality right now that I'm looking at. And my acceptance is a willingness to not fight with it. So, I mean, here's a somewhat superficial example, actually, but it comes to my mind quite often. My great-grandmother, one of her favorite, I don't know, it wasn't favorite, one of her saddest complaints, in the time that I spent a lot of time with her, she was probably about my age, she would look down in her arm and she'd say, "Oh, look at this old crepey skin. I just hate this old crepey skin." And, now I look and go, "Oh, wow, crepey skin. I get it." But the amount of energy that went in as if I just look at that from my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mother, at looking in the mirror and going, "Look at that. It is what it is." Oh, yes, the old gals are cackling. We talk about what you found here, but we won't go there. It is what it is. So I was talking with Geshe Dadal about this, and he gave me some tips because I was thinking acceptance is that something akin to non-attachment, if we think about it. I mean, non-attachment is not a very attractive term. It is number 4 of the 11 virtuous mental factors. So it's a very important mental factor to cultivate. But non-attachment sounds kind of bureaucratic and clinical. So I think a lot about what non-attachment actually is. And in some way, as I was talking to Geshe Dadal, he said, actually, acceptance is an antidote to 3 different kinds of minds. One is acceptance is an antidote to resistance. We're pushing against something, we don't want to do it. Acceptance is accepting something, accepting reality as it is. He also said it's an antidote to denial. Refusing to accept what is. Acceptance then opens our doors to accept reality. And then in the sense of that we're grasping to an idea, or we want things to be a certain way, or we want to hang on to something, like the situation of grief even. Acceptance then becomes non-attachment in that way, or a doorway to non-attachment, and letting go the thing that we're clinging to. So it's really very powerful. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross kind of famously made this analogy of how it is, of the stages of approaching, of how people deal with death. I think the first one is denial, then anger and bargaining, and it comes to acceptance in the end. She also maybe not quite so famously, denounced her own work as she was facing her own death. And again, from Geshe-la, he said, oh, that's a person who could preach but didn't practice. So, pithy. Something that we can also preach, but practicing acceptance is a whole other thing. So I think about, like, when does the opportunity for acceptance arise? Whenever a person is doing something I don't like, saying something I don't like, being something I don't like, then the mind of acceptance actually gets over my resistance or over my dislike or over my whatever to accept the person and see them as they are. When I'm experiencing a feeling in my body, when there is pain or when there is frustration in my mind, to stop and practice, oh, I am not accepting reality as it is. To simply stop and be with what's there in the moment, then I have the energy and the clarity to actually do something about what's happening in front of me, if possible. And if it's not possible, then simply to accept it and let it go. So now this is not easy. I'm just not spouting this off the top of my head like this. But one of the things that I think is super useful, well, two things. One is to spend more and more time trying to understand what are my reactions, especially to the arising of an unpleasant feeling. Now that's subtle, but by the time I've really reacted to it, it's not subtle anymore. So when there's anger in my mind, or when there's, when I feel that energy arising where I want to react, can I stop and go, oh, I'm already exaggerating. Can I accept what's happening right here in front of me? And the same thing happens with attachment, which is even harder to see. Because for me still, as much as I've tried to work with attachment, and I have, give myself some credit, but still, when attachment arises, it's really not until I'm about to lose contact with the object that I notice I've been attached. Yeah. But still, that arising of attachment is also an exaggeration. Whereas if I can step back, take a breath, and go, oh, what's the reality here? And accept what's here, then it's easier to let go. Because as soon as we have attachment, I don't know about you, but what I'm experimenting with is this true? As soon as attachment arises, fear is immediately there. Fear of being separated from the experience of the happiness. Immediately. I think that's true, but that's a personal thing. So what I'm appreciating is how much our Lamrim practice helps us, guides us to acceptance without saying this is a meditation on acceptance. For example, the more I believe, the more my experience is that we meditate on impermanence, the more we accept moment by moment that things are changing. The easier it is to accept that even the things that we're attached to the happiness is not going to last, and the external objects are going to fade and fall away. The internal objects are also not going to last, but sometimes those are harder to recognize. But just daily or regular meditation on impermanence and death starts to lead us, I think, towards looking at reality more clearly. That's its purpose. And when we look at reality more clearly, then acceptance becomes a part of that practice, right? Or when we're meditating on the dukkha of cyclic existence. All the different ways that we look at how the unsatisfactoriness of the situation that we're in, that the things that we crave for don't last, that as hard as we work, as hard as we strive, our goals and ambitions and our worldly wishes elude us. Those kinds of meditations lead us towards accepting it is what it is. I mean, one of the things I'm really dealing with right now is I have spent intentionally 4 years developing a PR team that was ready to do the Buddha Hall communication. And now we're right at the heat of it, and that team is gone. Gone. Mostly gone. And the ones who are here are doing different things. There are other people that are stepping in, which is fantastic. And in my previous sort of more diluted state, I would have been whining about, I never get the support I need, I never have help, I'm always alone, blah, blah, I have to do it myself, blah, 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 blah. Fortunately, I've been working on acceptance kind of a lot for the last few years. And yeah, we're training as quickly as we can, and there are very capable people to step in and help and do it. So that energy wasted on complaining before, oh my gosh, how would life be different? Anyway, I couldn't get to it till now. It is what it is. But I see how much energy is wasted in fighting in reality. So of course, Shantideva, the great Indian sage, gives us this antidote so clearly in his famous, famous verse, so easy to quote. So easy to quote. If something can be done about it, why be upset? Do it. If something can't be done about it, why be upset? Nothing can be done. Let it go. It is what it is. So I just wanted to share today this little teeny bit of now a contemporary vernacular that I think is very much a doorway to really important understanding and helps us both in our day-to-day activities and our day-to-day relationships with each other, and recognizing the situation that we're in on a very kind of micro level. How many people are showing up to wash the dishes this morning? It is what it is. And also on the huge macro level, what it is like to be living in samsara, where I am on the path. It is what it is. Not as resignation in any way, shape, or form, but recognizing this is how it is. Okay, with clarity and without wasting energy on complaining and wailing and suffering about it. We just do what needs to be done. It's a lot easier, I think.